Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 194.
House Bill 194 by Representative Saints, the 180th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment, so as to clarify that a term of probation shall follow the mandatory term of imprisonment for persons convicted of a sexual offense. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Non-Civil, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Saines to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to be quick. House Bill 194 addresses Park v. Georgia 2019 decision that over the course of one night, hundreds of dangerous sexual predators that through the Sheriff's Office discretion were given the important deterrence of a GPS monitor because of their leveling from SORB, which classifies through 3 levels, third being dangerous sexual predator. This bill refines that measure and adds a lifetime sentence of probation to 14 felony level sex offenses. It does this, again, 14 felony level sex offenses that have been twice adjudicated, meaning 2 separate offenses, 2 separate complete instances that have been found guilty through this. And one item that has come up through committee that folks have been against is it doesn't give judicial discretion. I'd highlight in the bill that after 10 years of being on probation, the state has to then bring it before a Superior Court judge. This gives judicial discretion. It's a judicial discretion in the time frame that a judge would have the necessary leveling information. We know that SORB's most important leveling information to appropriately classify potential of recidivism is through the course of that sentence. So it adds that 10 years. If the judge at that point doesn't find that it's appropriate to do the lifelong sentence, they can take it off. It also has important measures regarding SORB, which is the leveling organization, name change, and et cetera. Mr. Speaker, given the time, I'll yield for one question.
You have no questions, not even one.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Kennard to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight I rise in opposition to HB 194. It was never on my vision board to run for elected office. It's never on my radar at all. I was very content being a pastor and directing the Inspire program, which works to end homelessness. But after years of working in this field, I began to notice patterns, predictable patterns, and finding common threads among this population. As I became more and more curious about the root causes of these predictable incomes, I drew the conclusion that poverty is not only behavioral, but it's also structural. It is behavioral, and there is the important component of personal responsibility, and individuals should own and address their life results. That is what we do in our program. We work on modifying behaviors, habits, and belief systems. But just as powerful of a factor is an undeniable structure that's in place that accounts for a significant amount of poverty that we face in our state and nation. I have discovered that this structure is propped up by policy and legislation, and that is what has compelled me to run for office to work on this political structure. Dr. King said, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin at a beggar, but it comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." We do see people work hard and change their lives in our program, but I must be honest with you, it's a heavy lift because of this structure powered by existing policies and codes. It's difficult to move the needle with this group because of systematic inequities in education, literacy, mental health, and bias in our criminal system. We have had some momentum in the recent past. We were going in the right direction with criminal justice reforms during the Nathan Deal administration, but it is clear that we have done an about-face. The criminal justice reform ship has sailed, and we are headed back to this very dark road of not just punishing people, but crushing them with harsh sentences. The longest probation periods in the country is in Georgia, 4 times the national average. And then we put them in our state prisons that are honestly in disarray. Conditions are simply horrific in many of our facilities. Proof positive that we are regressing in criminal justice reform is HB 194, which piles on punishment for sex offenders when we already have some of the toughest punitive measures in the country. The program I work with attempts to work with these folks on the registry, but it's virtually impossible because of just the housing restrictions alone. As a matter of fact, there's so few housing options in my county that many of the individuals on the list are essentially exiled from Gwinnett. During the tough on crime years, we saw debilitating policies like 3 strikes and you're out that ballooned our incarceration rates to the largest in the world. The U.S. represents 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population, which means that 1 out of 4 persons behind bars in the world are locked up, ironically, in the land of the free. HB 194 does one better, though. Instead of 3 strikes and you're out, it's 2. Lifetime punishment for the second offense. And it's an additional cost to the state, $1,100 per person per year for the ankle monitor cost alone. It removes judicial discretion. It's a solution looking for a problem when there is a microscopic recidivism rate with this group. It is so small that the bill's sponsor could only identify 53 individuals that would qualify. Do we really want to end judicial discretion because of 53 individuals out of 24,000 total on the registry? Let me be clear. Please understand, individuals should be held accountable for their wrongdoing with appropriate punishment. But this Old Testament-styled vengeance is a throwback to a less evolved society. Do justice, love mercy, the scripture says. Justice and mercy are not mutually exclusive. Let's indeed hold these persons accountable, but also allow these same citizens an opportunity with a path forward to redeem themselves and find restorative justice. Vote no to HB 194. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Chairman Burchett to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think one important thing to remember about this bill is this is not the first time around for these offenders. This is the second time these offenders have committed some of the most heinous crimes that can be committed. Let me just tell you what these crimes are. I won't belabor this point because I don't know that it'll change many minds, but I do want to just tell you some of these crimes that are already, after a second offense, can be sentenced to up to life. Kidnapping, if the victim is 14 years of age or younger. Trafficking of child for sexual servitude. Trafficking of a child less than 18 years of age. Rape, aggravated sodomy, child molestation, aggravated child molestation. I think many people in this chamber would agree that these are some of the most heinous crimes that can be committed in the state of Georgia, anywhere for that matter. And the fact of the matter is, this is the second time these folks have committed this, and all we're asking for is that we can monitor them for the rest of their lives, because data shows that these folks are going to commit these crimes over and over again. So I am okay with erring on the side of monitoring stalking type behavior against children. I would ask for your favorable consideration on this bill. This is a good bill. I understand the opposition's argument that we want to be in this posture of criminal justice reform, but when it comes to the worst of the worst, and I would submit to you that these folks are the worst of the worst, I'm okay with giving them a life sentence. If you would please vote yes on this bill, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Representative Momtahan rise?
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that the ministry that was mentioned earlier is the same ministry that puts those annoying pink bags on everybody's mailbox?
I have no idea. What purpose does Chairman Todd Jones rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 133, I'd like to be excused from this vote.
Gentleman has that right, and the record will so reflect. What purpose does Chairman Setzler rise?
Parliamentary
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that we're only talking about folks who've been scored as dangerous sexual predators, and that after having been scored, they've committed yet another offense? And isn't it further true, Mr. Speaker, that this allows the system to monitor them with ankle bracelets? Otherwise, there's no way to monitor these people. Isn't
I
that true,
think the
Mr.
gentleman is correct in that. What purpose does Representative Holly rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that this chamber, often having to receive the understanding and wisdom of our morning prayers, often finds us at odds with the forgiving Jesus and what he would expect of us?
I'm going to let everybody determine that within their own conscience. Final parliamentary inquiry goes to Representative Saines. For what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary
State your
inquiry.
inquiry.
Is it not true that SORB data indicates that over 7% of their classified offenders would be applicable to this law, that though that the inaccuracy of 52 individuals being applied to this law is another notion, but 52 individuals of sex crimes lead many victims, and victims of rape, child molestation, and aggravated child molestation would not see this measure as insignificant?
If the gentleman so states, I'm sure he believes that to be true. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 194. The ayes are 110, the nays are 59. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed.